Hello guys, welcome to Medics Academy, a place where medical knowledge meets excellence. My name is Abdurrahman Awal, the founder and the lead tutor at Haymedics Academy. On our today's episode of our medical lecture series, we are going to look into physiology, and our topic is going to be body fluids, physiology of body fluids. Before we move on, here is our learning objectives. At the end of this lecture, you should know fluid intake and output, the balance that exists between fluid intake and fluid output, body fluid compartment, blood volume, measurement of fluid volume, regulation of fluid exchange. Then we also need to talk on the basic principles of osmosis and osmotic pressure, and also clinical correlate. This is more of medical physiology, and as such, we are going to also dwell much on the clinical aspect of body fluids. It is essential for all these things, the basic stuffs are essential for, as we progress through our clinical training, all this stuff also sets tone for our clinical practice. Before we move on, let's look at this vignette together. Which of the following solutions, when infused intravenously, would result in an increase in extracellular fluid volume, a decrease in intracellular fluid volume, and an increase in the total body water after osmotic equilibrium? A. 1 liter of 0.9% sodium chloride solution. B. 1 liter of 0.45% sodium chloride solution. C. 1 liter of 3% sodium chloride solution. D. 1 liter of 5% dextrose solution. And E. 1 liter of pure water. After the whole lecture, we'll come back to this vignette, and by then, I'm sure that we should be able to answer this vignette by ourselves. So let's look at the second vignette. So this is practical enough. A patient presented to accident and emergency unit with signs of increased or raised intracranial pressure following traumatic brain injury after a road traffic accident. Which of the following fluid is contraindicated? A. Isotonic fluid. B. Hypertonic fluid. C. Hypotonic fluid. Following our learning objectives, after we have ticked all the learning objectives, so it is after we have ticked all the learning objectives, I'm sure by then we should be able to provide answers to all these. This might look so so sophisticated and cumbersome, but I want to assure you that when you follow this lecture with full attention, all these vignettes, they are just they are just the basic thing that you should all know. Now, by way of introduction, body fluid compartment. So that's where we're going to start from. But before moving on, body fluid, as you all know, fluid in the body. Fluid, the human body could either be, we have the solid component, should I just say solid, or let me just say non-fluid component and the fluid component. So if you look at the human body is not 100% made up of fluid. So that is obvious and no doubt about that. So how many percentage does the fluid constitute, and how many percentage does the non-fluid part, the solid, the semi-solid, or whatever you might call it, how many percentage do they constitute? So let's go to our whiteboard and see what we can do in terms of illustrations, clarifications, and explanation. Now, the human body, as I said, there is solid or the non-fluid part, and there is also the fluid part. So essentially, the fluid constitutes about 60%, okay, 60%, while the non-fluid part constitutes about 40%. But then it should be noted that variations exist. Variations in terms of the age, the sex, in terms of in terms of the nutritional status of the individual, variation in terms of the fatty component and the muscle mass of the individual. So we are going to look into this later on. But then let's further classify what we have here. I said earlier that the solid component constitutes about 40%, the fluid about 60%. This fluid, they exist in compartment. They don't just exist like that. They exist in compartment. And there is kind of exchange, a kind of communication between these are compartments, which we also need to know. So for the fluid, basically, we can say that the fluid is made up of extracellular fluid and intracellular fluid. Okay, extracellular fluid and intracellular fluid. As the word implies, cellular. Intracellular fluid are those fluid that you find within the cells, while the extracellular fluid are found outside the cell. So extracellular fluid is further classified into intravascular intravascular fluid and extravascular fluid. Okay, and extravascular fluid. So let's open a fresh page and see this properly. So I said that the fluid component is either what, ECF or extracellular fluid or intracellular fluid. Okay, so and I said that extracellular fluid, as the word implies, outside the cells. These are fluids that are found outside the cells, outside the body tissues. Okay, they are further classified into intravascular fluid and extravascular fluid. Okay, extravascular fluid. So from blood vascular vessels, blood vessels, intravascular fluid. So when you talk of intravascular fluid, you are synonymously referring to plasma, because the plasma is the fluid that is found within the blood vessels. The fluid that runs within the blood vessels is the intravascular fluid. While the extravascular fluid, they are the fluid you found in the interstitial space. So the fluid in the interstitial space is the interstitial fluid. And also there are some fluid in the there's also transcellular fluid. Okay, transcellular transcellular fluid. So now I said the fluid level, the fluid level is about 60%. Okay, while the non-fluid part is 40%. Now let's talk in terms of quantity and in terms of values. And before I move on, one caveat I actually want to say is that for values in physiology, variation exists, okay, and they always occur in ranges. So you might be hearing something like clinical to clinical, like 5 to like 5 to 6, 5 to 7, something like that. So they occur in ranges, okay. So that should be noted. So for extracellular fluid constitute about one third of the total body water, while the intracellular fluid constitute the remaining two-third. Okay, so for the the total body fluid is being measured as 0.5 to 0.6 gram per 0.5 to 0.6 liter per kilogram. So and in a 70 kg man, so a 70 kg man, a 70 kilogram man is the physiologic man. That's the reference point usually in physiology. So what is obtainable here is the total body water after all this calculation. What is obtainable is about 48 liter. 48 liter. So mean that the total body water in a 70 kilogram man is around 48 liter, or better still 42 to 48 liter. So and now let's take our percentage. I said intracellular fluid constitute about two-thirds. So when you now say the two-thirds of 48, 42, 48 liter should be roughly about 32 liter. So intracellular fluid is about 32 liter, which is synonymous to two-thirds of the total body water, which is 48 liter. While extracellular fluid is about one-third, which is equivalent to when you take the remainder, so 48 minus 32, or better still, one-third of 48, you should be getting something around 16 liter. 16 liter. So am I this is it making sense? Of course. So you should be getting around 16 liter. Now on further classification, as I've said, extracellular fluid could either be intravascular fluid within the blood vessels, which is the plasma, and extravascular fluid are the fluid that are found in the interstitial space, which is the interstitial fluid, and transcellular fluid. I will soon dwell more on transcellular fluid later on. Just keep following with full attention. Now, 16 liter. So intravascular fluid constitute about one fourth. If I may, one fourth. Intracellular fluid constitute about one fourth. Intravascular fluid constitute about one fourth. Okay, 1 over 4 of this 16 liter. And when you take 1 over 4 of 16 liter, it's already clear. 16 divided by 4. So this is about 4 liter. This is about 4 liter. Now, the simple mathematics you can do is just to take the difference of 16 and 4. So you'll be getting the extravascular fluid is about 12 liter. Or better still, you say that 3 over 4 of 16. So you are still going to get about 12 liter. So these are just the basic things you need to. This is about 12 liter. Okay. Now let's move on. So on further calculation, it should be noted that variation exists, as I've said earlier, which we are going to discuss more. And also, so I said 48 liter, then is the total body water, right? And I said that it could either be intracellular fluid within the cell or extracellular fluid outside the cell. Extracellular fluid is then further classified into those that are confined within the blood vessels, which are the intravascular fluid, which is the plasma, constituting about 4 liter, and extravascular fluid, which constitutes about 12 liter. 12 plus 4, that is 16 liter. The total body water is about 48. 48 minus 16, the remainder is intracellular fluid, which is about 32 liter. Fine. Now, as I said all these fluid they exist in compartment, and communication exists between these compartments. Now, let's quickly look at the fluid compartment. You should know that intravascular fluid are the fluid that are confined within the blood vessels, within the capillary, because at the tissue level, at the cellular level, we have the capillary, okay, coming from the artery, becoming smaller to the arterioles, then the capillaries. So the capillaries, they are not just, the capillaries are well regulated. The endothelial cells are there to serve as a selective permeable membrane. The endothelial cell does not just allow anything to move or to communicate between the intravascular space and the extravascular space. So let's assume this is the endothelial cells. Okay, this is the endothelial cells. Okay, this is the vascular lumen. This is the lumen. Okay, this is the lumen. So this is the plasma in the lumen within the blood vessel, within the capillary lumen. Then these are the endothelial cells. Between the endothelial cells, there are spaces, there are pores. Okay, the pores allow exchange of nutrients and solute and fluid. Okay, so the next space you are going to meet immediately after the pericapillary space is the interstitial space. So this, let's say this is the interstitial space. After the interstitial space, then the cells. So this is the cell, okay? So this is the cell which constitute the intracellular fluid, okay? And this is the what? This is the interstitial space which constitute the interstitial fluid, or you say extravascular space. Then this is the what? This is the intravascular fluid, okay, which intravascular space which constitute intravascular fluid or plasma. So addition of the intravascular fluid and the extravascular fluid constitute the ECF. So this is the ECF and this is the ICF. And I said that communication exists between them. Okay, the plasma that is coming, some of the fluid can leak into the interstitial space, then the intracellular fluid. Okay, now there is a role for lymphatic system, and this is where you should get things right. Okay, these are just the basic biology, but then we still need to explain more. So the communication that exists between them is bidirectional. Okay, it could be this way or this way. They are bidirectional. This also could be this way or this way. Is bidirectional. Okay, and that's why we need to talk on homeostasis, because homeostasis is just the maintenance of constant internal environment despite changes in the external condition. Okay, there are some external conditions, maybe in the case of excess fluid or in the case of low fluid level in the body. So despite the fluid being low or despite the fluid being excess, the body will want to respond to still maintain that normal 48 liter or that normal 32 liter of the ICF and that normal 16 liter of the extracellular fluid. So that just the body will still want to balance, and that is our homeostasis. And this homeostasis, it doesn't just occur in the fluid of the body, it occurs in so many other things like temperature regulation. The normal body temperature should be about 6.5 to 37, 36.4 to 37.5. So if there's anything that changes in the external conditions, maybe cold weather or hot weather or something of similar scenario, the body will still want to maintain that constant, that normal body temperature. Same thing goes for blood pressure. The normal blood pressure should be about 120/80. Okay, all things being equal. So whenever there's something or in the external environment or something within the body or a pathological process going on in the body will still want to ensure that that blood pressure is still what it is. Okay, and another example is body temperature, even body the pH level of the body. So for our own concern is the fluid. Okay, so we take in fluid intake and what? Fluid output. Okay, fluid input and fluid output. So there has to be balance. Fluid is being lost in the body and also fluid is being replenished in the body. How is our fluid replenished in the body? It's either through intake, fluid intake. So and when you take fluid, it's either you are taking fluid, a pure fluid, maybe you are taking water or you are taking fluid from the food you eat. Because if you prepare food, you are going to use water to prepare your food and you are taking that fluid. Or another source of fluid is the fluid that comes from metabolic byproduct, metabolism that comes from metabolism. Because when you remember your your basic biology, cellular respiration, if glucose is oxidized, is metabolized in the presence of oxygen, okay, which is our cellular respiration in your basic biology, 6,6H12O6 plus 6O2. The end product usually is 6CO2 plus 6H2O plus ATP or energy. Okay, plus ATP or energy. So this 6H2O, the water that is being produced from metabolism also constitute to what? To the body water. It's just a way of the body also gaining water. So intake, and this intake is about 2 to 3 liter. Okay, 2 to 3 liter. While this water that is coming from metabolism is about 200 to 500 milliliter. Okay, 200 to 500 milliliter, 0.2 to 0.5 liter. And one other thing I need to tell you about physiology, that you should know your conversion very well, milliliter, centiliter, all those things. You should know how to convert. If you don't want to say 200 or 500, you can simply say 0.2 to what? 0.5 liter. So you should know your conversion very well. Now, that's how we excuse me, that's how the body gets fluid. Okay, from intake, which is about 2 to 3 liter, and that's why they say that you should drink enough fluid. Okay, that's the amount that is needed. because the amount of fluid that is lost in the body is about 3.2 liter. Get it right. So the amount of fluid that is lost from the body is about 3.2 liter per day or per 24 hour. I will soon give a thorough breakdown of this 3.2 liter. Where do they come from? Okay, I will soon give a thorough breakdown, but then you just have to follow me with full attention. So if about 3.2 liter of fluid is being lost from the body, that means the amount that is needed to replenish the body water store is also it should be equal even or more than the amount that is being lost. So if the amount that is being lost is much than the amount that has been taken in, or simply say the amount of fluid that has been taken in is lesser than the amount that is being lost, homeostasis is not maintained. Okay, homeostasis is not maintained because at the very end we are going to have deficit, fluid deficit, and that is not good for the body because the body needs fluid for metabolism, the body needs fluid for so many things. So the body needs fluid to carry the plasma, of course, through the blood cells to carry nutrients to the body tissues, and also the fluid is also needed to carry waste products from tissues to the excretory organs like the kidney, like the skin, and other excretory organs in the body. So that being said, now I said that interaction exists between the extracellular fluid, interstitial extracellular fluid, which is subdivided into intravascular and extravascular, which is interstitial space or interstitial fluid, and what? Intracellular fluid within the cell. This is the cell. Within the cell. So, and I told us that there is a role for lymphatic system. Now, let me test your basic biology. What is the role of lymphatic system in all this we have said? Are you guessing? Are you saying the right thing? Okay, let me speak. Let me speak the answer. So the lymphatic system is there to actually, you know, that I said that some fluid leaks into the what? Into the interstitial space. Okay? Some fluid leaks into the interstitial space. Let us open a fresh page. So this is our capillary. So of course, the capillary is not just like this. There are pores giving out connections. Okay? So let's say this is endothelial. Okay, there are spaces which allow for communication. Okay, there are spaces. Okay, is that fine? So now, now, and I said this is the cell. So between the capillary and the cell and the body cells is the interstitial space that contains interstitial fluid. Now there are some fluid that leaks into the what? Interstitial space. Okay, so the role of the lymphatic is just to carry fluid from the interstitial space back to what? Back to the blood. That's what I've been thinking about. So that's just the simple role of the lymphatic system. Some protein, some fluid got leaked into the interstitial space. Okay, some fluid got leaked into the interstitial space, and even proteins sometimes. So the role of the lymphatic system is just to maintain fairly constant medium. So that all these things also contribute to homeostasis. So the lymphatic drainage is there to what? The fluid that leaked and some of the protein that leaked from the plasma from the capillary lumen that leaks into the cellular space, it then carries it back to the what? To the intravascular space. That is the simple role of lymphatics. So now let's go back to our presentation slide and see what you have. So I've been able to lay down some basic foundations and principles of which we are going to apply as we journey through our lecture. So once again, your full attention is needed, and also plead with us if you have not subscribed to my channel, kindly spare time to do so now. Thank you. So Now, back to our slide. I said maintenance of a relatively constant volume and stable composition of body fluid is crucial for homeostasis. I've explained this earlier. So when there is the fluid intake and the fluid loss, there has to be balance. In a case when there is no balance, let's say the fluid is not enough or the total body water which should be about 48 liters is less. Let's say something like that is happening, or the plasma level should be about 4 liters. Okay, we don't have there's the plasma level is low. So there are some regulation that occurs. Regulation in the sense that, for example, now in the kidney, fluid are being retained in the kidney. If there's lesser fluid in the body, which could translate to which could translate or lead to under perfusion of the kidney, that can actually activate renin-angiotensin aldosterone system RAS. So don't worry, when you get to your cardiovascular system, we explain more about this in our subsequent videos. But for now, keep following. So the kidney try to regulate by holding on to water. Okay, aldosterone is being secreted. When aldosterone is being secreted, it actually helps to retain sodium. Potassium is being excreted. So, and you know, sodium is an osmotically active particle. The more the sodium, the more water is being retained. Okay, and also as a part of when there's not enough fluid, the solute level in the body rises, meaning the osmolarity of the body rises. You soon talk about the concept of osmolarity and osmolality. There are lots to dish out. Just keep following with full attention. So you soon talk on the concept of osmolarity and osmolality. So as I said when the water concentration is low, so when the water concentration is low, by analogy, the solute will rise. So meaning that what, there will be increased osmolality, and in the hypothalamus of the brain, hypothalamus is a structure in the brain that has so many functions. But the one that pertains to fluid regulation is the osmoreceptors in the hypothalamus. So the osmoreceptor in the hypothalamus detects increase level of osmolarity, and from there the test center is being activated. So you feel more thirsty and you feel the urge to drink more water. Likewise, as part of the homeostasis that pertains to fluid, mind you, there might be a new lecture on homeostasis on its own, because homeostasis is a very important lecture in physiology, which as a medical student, physiotherapy student, medical laboratory science student, any course, even medical student, you just have to know homeostasis. It has to be at your finger's tip. Okay? It is a stuff that has to be spinal. So it's not something, medicine is not magical. Just try and understand things, know what to cram and know what to understand. And also a medical concept, you have to love it, you have to memorize it, you have to understand it. I said you have to love it because this thing is about passion. So a topic or a concept that you don't love, it's likely that you might not be able to have a good grasp. Despite reading, and constant reading, you might still not be able to have a good grasp. So a positive mindset is actually the stepping stone of you achieving a solid understanding of so many medical concepts. So I will be laying more emphasis on love it, love it. You have to love it, you have to memorize it, and you have to, of course, know what to memorize and know what to cram. So let's continue. I said that the osmo receptor, then you feel thirsty and you feel the urge to drink more water. And also in the cases where you have drank a lot of water, the water goes to your GI system, your gastrointestinal tract. From there, the water got absorbed. So after some 30 minutes, the fluid level in the plasma increases. From there, you will notice that the volume of your urine will also increase because of you have taken more water, more fluid intake, more fluid loss. So your urine output will also be increased. So that's just homeostasis, a balance, intake, output, more intake, more output, less intake, less output. That is just homeostasis for you pertaining to fluid. Now let's move on. I hope this is making sense. Now I said that as I've been saying that fluid intake and fluid output. So what are the sources of fluid intake? I've said it from the fluid that you take, which is about 2 to 3 liter, because I said that the fluid loss is about 3.2 liter. And when the fluid loss is about 3.2 liter, 3.2 liter. I mean that the fluid intake should also be at the same level so that you can maintain a constant internal environment. So sources, I said majorly from two sources, from the liquid and food that you take, which constitutes about 2,000 to 3,000 ml per day or per 24 hour. So that is about 2 to 3 liter. Then the one from the oxidation from your cellular respiration, okay, from your cellular respiration, 6 is H12O6 plus 602, 6O2, giving you 6H2O plus 6 CO2 and ATP, which is energy. The energy is used in running cellular function. So that one is 2 to 5 mil or 200 to 500 mil per day, which correspond to 0.2 to 0.5 liter per day. Okay, so when you sum everything together, you also be getting about 3.2 liter, which is equivalent to the 3.2 liter that has been lost per day. So, and I told you that variations exist in physiology. So, the fluid intake, I said 2,000 to 3,000 liter per day, variation exists. How does variation exist? A person that just finished a strenuous work like exercise, someone that just finished jogging or performing kind of a strenuous exercise, that person will have more urge to drink more water. So fluid intake for that person will increase because the person has sweat. So fluid output, there's already more fluid loss. And I said in homeostasis, fluid loss equals to what? Input. So you have to, you just have to relate things together. So and also climate, in hot climate, people will sweat. So those are the variations and it occurs for different people. Now let's go to loss of body fluid. Loss of body fluid majorly is from majorly there's what you know as insensible water loss. That word looks surprising to you, right? Insensible, insensible as how. So insensible water loss occurs via two pathways. Two pathways. I'm still hammering it. Two pathways from the respiratory tract and also from the skin. Okay. Now you still that's why the 100 level, you being 100 level for some time before you now get to 200 level. That 100 level is not just for play because there are some concepts in your chemistry, some concepts in your biology, basic biology, even in physics. But by the time when you get to cardiovascular physiology, you are talking of blood pressure, you are talking of mean arterial blood pressure, you are talking of fluid mechanics, okay, how your blood vessel, diameter of the blood vessels, how they affect pressure, all these things are about physics, they are just basic physics. So you still need all these things as all your basic, you still need all your basic. So that on the level not just for play or just for they are just wasting time. No, no, it's still part of the curriculum and is still very, very important. So in sensitive water loss, I want to talk on water vapor pressure here. Okay, the water vapor pressure is about 47 millimeter mercury. So when you take in, let's go to our whiteboard and see what you can do. Okay, so these are the things. So let's open a fresh page. So I will say that the water vapor pressure, let's say this is summer. I don't know how to draw, but forgive me. So, of course, your respiratory tract from the nose, you talk of the nasal cavity, from the nasal cavity down to the nasopharynx, from the nasopharynx down to where? Yeah, answer now. From the nasopharynx down to the oropharynx, from the oropharynx, down to the throat, the pharynx, from there. From there, you have the glottis. From there, you have the larynx. You have the larynx this way. From there, you have your trachea. From your trachea, you have the bronchi, right and the left bronchi. From there, the bronchi further. Uh, Mind you, the right bronchi is more vertical than the left bronchi. That is why if someone should aspirate, there's likely that that aspirated or foreign body is likely to be found in the right lung than the left lung. So all these things, see, there's no magic in medicine. All these things are just basic principle. So for as a physician or as a medical student, if aspiration should occur, you should know that okay, it's more to be found in the right than the lung because of what? If you look at the right bronchi, this right bronchi is more vertical than the left. So if a particle is coming, the particles want to slide down to the right, being more vertical than the left. So that's just by the way. Don't mind me. I've been trying to divert a lot, but don't mind me. So from the bronchi, there are branches, the bronchioles, the terminal bronchioles, okay? There's the conducting bronchioles, the terminal bronchioles, and the respiratory bronchioles, okay? So after that, after the bronchioles, then that's when the alveoli, okay? The alveoli. So, but we are not doing respiratory physiology or respiratory anatomy. So when we get to that, we'll be dwelling much on it. So when air comes in, the air you are breathing out from the external environment, the air is dry. Okay, the air is dry, it contains particles. So the moment the air gets to the nostril, to the nose, the five say the air in the nose, okay, the air in the nose helps to trap down some particles, some larger particles. The air helps to trap it down. Okay, so by the time the air is getting into the airway proper, the larynx, oropharynx, and trachea, there's a need for humidification of the air. The air tends to what? It tends to absorb moisture from the respiratory tract lining. So it tends to absorb moisture so that the air can be what? Humidified. Humidification of the air. It tends to absorb moisture. So that absorption of moisture is actually loss of fluid. You are losing fluid from the respiratory tract. So and that loss, you always lose that fluid. And that loss can even be increased in a situation when the patient is or when an individual is hyperventilating. The normal respiratory rate should be about 12 to 20 cycle per minute, but by the time a patient is having a respiratory rate of 30 cycle per minute, 40 cycle per minute, or even a doubled about 40 cycle per minute, a doubled respiratory rate, you should know that there will be even be more loss of water. That's by the way. So that is one. And also, as humans, there's loss of water from the skin as well. Okay, this is the conified layer of the skin from the stratum corneum, stratum granulosum, spinosum, stratum basalis. So there are some fluid that are also lost from the through evaporation from the skin. So skin loss and respiratory loss. So they both give rise to their skin loss and respiratory loss is what is termed as insensible water loss, and they both give rise to 1.7 liter, which is about 1,700 milliliter per day. So do you now understand? So there's no how this fluid have been lost. So this skin loss is through evaporation is actually different from the one that has been lost through sweat gland. Even people that don't have sweat gland, people that are not born with sweat gland, they will still have this insensible loss in form of skin loss. So, but then by the time a patient is now exercising or is now doing some other strenuous activity, the loss from the sweat gland is an additional loss that will be contributed to this. So try and get it right, okay? So 1.7 liter. Anything you don't understand, we have our general discussion page. You can always you can check the description below and see the link to our general page. Any question, be it anatomy, physiology, medical biochemistry, any medical course, even 400 level pathology, histopathology, more chemical pathology, hematology, microbiology, medical microbiology, just you can always ask them. So we have group of scholars that can always attend to your questions. So when you ask, so that's just by the way. So 1,700 millimeter per day from insensible loss from the skin and the respiratory loss combined together. Okay, are we really following? All right. So that makes sense. Now, I said that the total loss is about 3.2 liter. Now, we have now accounted for 1.7 liter out of the 3.2 liter or 3,200 milliliter per day. Now, what of the remaining one? Where do they come from? Let's go to the kidney. Are you excited? You should be excited. Let's go to the kidney. The renal loss, of course, you urinate all the time. Okay? You urinate all the time. But if there's frequent urination, that's known as polyuria. But don't worry. So the kidney loss is about 1.5 liter per day. Per day. That is the kidney loss. Of course, you have to urinate. So some of you now, I don't know how many times you have urinated today. So you urinate. So and you are going to lose fluid. So 1.5 liter is from the kidney. 1.5 liter is from the kidney. So when you add 1,500 milliliter and 1,700 milliliter, what do you get? You get 3.2 liter. Do you understand? That's just medicine. There's no magic in medicine. But then variation can exist. There are some times when you drink enough fluid, this 1.5 liter can be exceeded. Okay, if you don't want to express fluid loss from the kidney in terms of day, you can also express it in terms of I think you can also express it in terms of hour. In terms of hour, okay. So meaning that what 1.5 liter per day is also same as saying 30 to 50 mils 30 to 50 mils per day. Okay, let's get a new screen. So I said from the kidney. So this is the structure of the kidney. This is the calyces. From there, the pelvis, the ureter. So just we are not doing unogenital physiology or unogenital anatomy. When we get there, of course, you learn more. The countercurrent mechanism and just don't worry, when we get there, you learn more. So from the kidney, I said fluid loss is about 1.5 liter per day or per 24 hour. Or you say 30 to 50 mil per hour. Okay, 30 to 50 mil per hour. So by the time you now combine it together with 1.7 liter from the insensible loss from the respiratory tract and the skin, you'll be getting about you'll be getting about what? You'll be getting about 3.2 liter. Okay, that is the loss. Then so now let's quickly do some clinical aspect. For I said now you really now understand that 3.2 liter is the fluid that has been lost. There are some cases when a patient will come to the hospital and a doctor will tell them not to drink water. For example, patient that is being prepped for abdominal surgery, okay, surgery in the stomach. Of course, you don't want to see any food or any liquid while operating on the patient's stomach. So for that kind of patient, you might tell them, okay, don't eat anything. So you'll be giving you fluid, IV fluid, intravenous fluid. And that is why the maintenance fluid for 24 hours is 3 liter. So that's just basis. So that's why it is 3 liter. The remaining 2 liter, the remaining 0.2 liter or 200 mil is being accounted for by the what? By the cellular respiration, the metabolism, which account for 200 to 500 mil. And I said that that one is from the what? Internal. But external, that is the 3 liter for what? Fluid deficit. There might be some indications where you might want to increase the fluid level just to meet homeostasis, or you might want to decrease the fluid level. But this is just the normal maintenance fluid in 24 hours, 3 liter per day. So that's why they give 3 liter in a day. So when as you advance through your through medical school, you learn to appreciate all these things better. But just try to have that solid foundation now. It helps a lot. Now let's move on. So let's move on. So respiratory loss, this has been explained. And also there are also loss from the feces, of course, from the feces about 100 to 200 mil per day. And this can also disturb homeostasis in some diseased condition like patient that has severe diarrhea. So just like the cholera pandemic or cholera epidemic that's happening in some parts of the country. So if there's a cholera, like in the case of cholera, uh, fluid is being lost. Literally, your anus becomes something like a tap. So it's just releasing fluid. Up to like 5 liters of fluid could be lost in a day. So when 5 liters of fluid is being lost as compared to 3.2 liters that should be lost combined together from all the body organ that fluid is supposed to be lost from, so that disturbs homeostasis, and that is what dehydration. The patient become dehydrated. So if that homeostasis is not maintained, the fluid input is not equals to the fluid output. Fluid output is greater than the fluid input. So that's a diseased condition, and that could be life-threatening. So the patient can even lost his life in the process if adequate intervention is not set in. So water loss by the kidney has been explained, 1.5 liter, as I've said, or 30 to 50 ml per day. Okay. So in a case when a patient drinks a lot of water, so this 1.5 liter might be increased. So a patient can even urinate as much as 10 liters in a day as opposed to 1.5 liter per day. Okay. So now let's talk on the body fluid compartment. This has been explained. I said into two: extracellular fluid and intracellular fluid. Intracellular fluid within the cells, that one is there. Okay. Extracellular fluid is divided into interstitial fluid and blood plasma. Then there's also transcellular fluid, which constitute minor fluid in the body. And I told you that I'm going to explain transcellular fluid later on. So transcellular fluid are the fluid in the other spaces, like the joint space. The joint space, you check the joint space in your musculoskeletal biology, the basic biology. That synovial, the joint cavity, it contains fluid known as synovial fluid. And also when you get to the abdomen, there is peritoneal space, which also contain fluid. In the heart, there's also pericardial space, which contain fluid. So in the eye, so in your eye, the anterior and the posterior eye chamber, the aqueous humor and the vitreous humor of the eye, they are also fluid. Okay. So the cerebrospinal fluid in the brain, in the ventricles of the brain and the subarachnoid space. So that is also fluid. Okay. So everything to combine together constitute about 1 to 2 liters of fluid per day. All this one, when you get to all these systems, you get to know more better. Okay. So just know that transcellular fluid exists, and they are the synovial fluid, peritoneal fluid, pericardial fluid, intraocular fluids, and cerebrospinal fluid, which constitute about 1 to 2 liters of fluid, 1 to 2 liters of total body fluid. Okay. All this has been explained. Now, I told us that all these things has been explained. Extracellular fluid compartment, all fluid outside the cells are known as extracellular fluid, which is further divided into intravascular and extravascular. They have been explained. I told us 2/4 is for interstitial, while the plasma, which is intravascular, is about 1/4. They have been explained. And I told us that the plasma is the non-cellular. The plasma is just the fluid within the blood vessels. So inside the blood vessels, we have the cells, we have the blood cells and the fluid. So the fluid medium is the plasma, and the blood cells, they are the white blood cells and the red blood cells. Okay. So and also the ions. So the ions, which will be positively charged ions, cations, and negatively charged ions, anions. And I also told us that communication or exchange exists between the plasma and the interstitial fluid, except for the what plus protein concentration. In the cases when the protein leaks, the lymphatic system is there to transfer fluid from the interstitial fluid back, fluid and protein back from the interstitial fluid back into the plasma. So and variation exists. The reason why this variation exists between the extracellular fluid and the interstitial fluid is that there are ions in the interstitial in the plasma. There are ions and there's also proteins. Mind you, proteins are negatively charged. Let's go back to our whiteboard. Let's get a new page and see what we can do. Sorry about that. So proteins, let's say this is the blood vessels, okay, and this is the interstitial space, and this is the cell. So there are ions, okay, there are cations, positively charged ions, there are anions, anions, negatively charged ions, cations, and they are also proteins. Mind you, let me ask these questions. Proteins, are they positively charged or negatively charged? Are you telling me negatively charged? You are very, very correct. You guys are scholar. So proteins are negatively charged, okay? So, and from your law of attraction, from your basic chemistry, I'm very sorry, I can't really remember my chemistry so well. Last I did chemistry was about, should I even say 10 years or 9 years ago. So proteins are negatively charged. And you should know that like charges repel, while unlike charges attract. So these are these negatively charged proteins attract. Sorry about this. What was all this? So these negatively charged proteins attract the cations. Okay. And I said that within the interstitial space, interstitial fluid, there are really no protein. Meaning that what? The plasma, intravascular fluid, because of these are negatively charged proteins that attract the cations, it means that the intravascular fluid volume contains more cations. Okay, it contains more cations compared to anions, while the interstitial space contain lesser cations because of what? There are no lesser protein. They are lesser protein and the charges are not really there. Okay, the charges are not really there. This is known as the Donan effect. So we might still talk much on it. Donan effect. So this is known as the Donan effect. It's just the effect that explains why cations are more in the plasma because of what? The proteins are there in the plasma, the albumin, fibrinogen, your immunoglobulins, okay? Those are the even protein factors, those are the proteins. They are negatively charged, okay, and they attract cations. So that explains why there are more cations in the intravascular space, okay? So that's simple enough. That's Donan effect. Now let's continue. So uh so it is essential. We've talked let's talk more on the cations and the anions before moving on to the blood volume. I'm coming. Okay, I think we have more explanation here. But let's talk on the blood volume as well. So for the blood volume. So I've been talking of plasma, 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 and you might be surprised that why are you not talking of the blood? So basically, blood is just part of the fluid component, and by the time you are talking of plasma together with the red blood cells, you're already talking of blood. Blood has a cellular component, which are the cells, the red blood cells, the white blood cells, the platelet, thrombocyte, and the non-cellular component, which is the fluid, which is the plasma. So by the time you are not talking of plasma in isolation, and you're already combining plasma with the cellular part, which are the red blood cell and white blood cell, you're already talking of blood. So that constitutes blood. And also blood are being maintained within the vascular system, within the arteries, arterioles, capillaries. From there, as blood is coming, the red blood cells are also coming, and the red blood cell contains, excuse me, the red blood cells contain hemoglobin, and hemoglobin carries oxygen. So the moment they get to from the artery to the arteriole, the vascular caliber, the vascular membrane becomes smaller. It gets to the capillary, capillary space around the body cells and tissue. Then the hemoglobin release oxygen. From there, the venous and the veins. So the only difference between that is just that the blood component or the blood volume on the arterial aspect has more oxygen, while on the posterior on the arterial aspect, while on the vein aspect, it has less oxygen. So average blood volume in man is about 7% of the adult body weight, and that equates to about 5 liters. So that's why a 70 kilogram man should have about 5 liters of blood. So 5 liters of blood. You have enough blood. Can you see that you have enough blood? That's why when they ask you to come and donate blood, they can't drain all your blood. That one pint of blood that you are donating is about 450 ml, 400 to 450 ml of blood, if I can recall well. Yeah, 450 ml, or should I even say 400 ml? And that's about 0.45 liter out of your 5 liter. And I said this homeostasis. So erythropoiesis will happen, more blood also will be secreted to replenish your blood within some few days. Okay, so though we still need to talk more on erythropoiesis in our subsequent lectures and all that it constitutes. So it will be a very interesting lecture, actually. Now, I said you have plasma, you have red blood cells being a component of blood. The plasma constitutes about 60%, while the remaining red blood cell constitute about 40%. And that is why if, how should I even say it? And that's why for if we go to laboratory, share for the MLS student, so of course you will be taught, you are going to be taught all these things in the laboratory, hematocrit. You are still going to be taught in lab. So blood will be spinned, and when blood is spinned, so what you are going to see being the end result is that the red blood cells will remain at the top, while the plasma will remain below. So the percentage of red blood cells in the blood is what is known as hematocrit, or or you call it packed cell volume, PCV, packed cell volume, packed cell volume. Okay, or you call it packed cell volume. And I said plasma is about 60%. So the RBC, which is the percentage component of red blood cells in the blood, so the remaining percentage is about 40%. And that is why the normal hematocrit in a man will be about 40%, or you say 0.4. Do you get? Or you say 0.4. Though in female, the female should have 0.35. There are, as I've said, this is physiology. Variation exists. Okay, variation exists. Variation exists in terms of sex. Male has higher value than female. Variation exists in terms of nutritional status. Someone that is well fed cannot be compared to someone that is, that just underfed or malnourished children. Get it right. Variation exists in terms of sex. Variation exists, in terms of body build. Someone that is more muscular, we have more water component than someone that is asthenic or someone that is obese. And also, variation is in terms of weight, but then there's a caveat in this weight. The weight we are talking about is in terms of muscular build. For example, a man of 120 kg, an obese man of 120 kg has more fat. I know that water and fat is not, is water is not lipophilic, it is lipophobic. Water is hydrophilic now. Abi hydro is water, hydrophilic. Water love you. Water loves water. Hydrophilic. Okay? So mean that what a person that has more fat, you have less water. While a person that has more muscle, you have more water. So even a 120 kg man that has more fat, you have less water compared to a 70 kg man that has more muscle. So that's just the simple mathematics. So variation exists like that. Variation also exists in terms of age. Infants or newborn babies constitute their body constitutes of 80% of fluid. 80%. 80%. A huge 80%. While in adults, it constitutes 60%, as we have said earlier. So variation exists in terms of age. Infant has more water, like 80%, while even the water could even be more if the infant is premature. So premature infant, the water could even be more, especially in premature babies. So while in adults about 60%. And also in aging, as people age, the water component tends to drop. Like an elderly person now, someone of 70 years old, 80 years old, at that age, so at that extreme of age, at that extreme of age of 70 years, 80-year-old, 70-year-old, the water also drops. So it drops because by then there will be more fat accumulation. Even if there's no fat accumulation, there will be muscular atrophy. So you start losing muscle as you age. So the water level still drop. Now I said variation exists in terms of sex, male and female. That is got it right. Fine. In terms of age, infant, adult, extreme of age, the elderly. In terms of nutritional status, undernourished or malnourished and person that is well fed cannot be compared. In terms of muscle build, someone that is more muscular. In terms of weight, someone that has weight or someone that has more fat, you have lesser water. So you have to understand it clearly. So these are just basic principles. They are basic. Now I've talked on hematocrit. I said hematocrit is just a fraction of blood volume that is composed of red blood cells. Okay, so the red blood cells are this hematocrit is being determined by centrifugation, as I've showed you in the tube. So the hematocrit tube is what I've drawn earlier. That the red blood cells are tightly packed at the bottom. I think there is a mistake here. The red blood cells is actually at the bottom. So that even makes sense. So things with cells you have to settle down. Okay, cells will need to settle down while the plasma is at the top. So this is 40% of red blood cell and plasma is at the top. This is about 60%. Sorry for that mistake. So correction factor, this is not really needed because as the red blood cells are being settled down, there will be some plasma that will be trapped among the packed red blood cells. Okay, and that gives a correction factor of 3 to 4%. Meaning that the true hematocrit value is about the 96% of 40% that we calculated. So hematocrit, the normal value, as I've said, is 40%, 0.4, while in female is about 36%, which is about 0.36. In a situation when you have low hematocrit, that's anemia, which could be graded in terms of severity. A person that has a man that has an hematocrit level of 0.3 cannot be compared to someone that has a hematocrit level of 0.2. So the anemia also occurs in terms of severity. So that's just anemia. Anemia is just loss of red blood cells or low red blood cells, low hematocrit. That for your level, that's just the simple definition of anemia, low hematocrit. So and it could be as much or as severe, which could be as low as 0.1. So that's why in some patients, fluid cannot really be enough to resuscitate some patients. They need to be given blood, especially patient that has road traffic accident and such patient lost a lot of blood. So that patient will need to be transfused with blood. So that's why if blood is needed, so it should be given to those that deserve it. Because the only way they can resuscitate the patient is just to increase the hematocrit level. Okay. So and there could be some situation when the red blood cells are so excessive. So when we get to erythropoiesis, we actually dwell much on this. And this condition is polycythemia. Polycythemia. So the hematocrit could, from the normal value of 0.4, it can rise as high as 0.65. Okay. Now let's move on to the constituent of the extracellular and intracellular fluid in terms of the ions. Okay. The cations and the anions. I've given us an overview earlier on. So I've given us an overview of cations and anions, and I said the cations are actually more in the plasma because of the what? The negatively charged particle of proteins found in the plasma which attract the cations. Okay. So and that is the Donan effect. Okay, as you can see, cation concentration plasma has a slightly higher concentration of positively charged ions due to the Donan effect. I've explained that earlier. So an example of cations that exist within the plasma. So we have the sodium ion, potassium ion, okay, calcium ion, and a whole of others. But the major ionic concentration in the plasma is sodium and chloride. Sodium chloride. The major ionic concentration in the plasma is sodium and chloride. They constitute about 80% ionic concentration in the plasma. I'm repeating myself. Sodium and chloride is the major ion of intravascular fluid volume, intravascular fluid, which is the plasma. They constitute about 80%. Meaning that what any value we are getting for sodium ion in terms of osmolality, they can serve as a fair representation of the osmolarity of the body of the plasma because they constitute the major ion. However, intracellular fluid constitute about 50%. Half of intracellular fluid is potassium, while other half constitute other ions. Okay, other ions in the intracellular fluid. That's been said. Extracellular fluid, I said sodium and chloride 80%. Intracellular fluid, potassium, constitute about 50%. Other ions, minor ions, constitute the remaining percentage. Okay, so the major ions in the cellular fluid, they are the plasma, major ion in the cellular fluid, which is they are the sodium and chloride, as I've said, and also bicarbonate as well. Bicarbonate as well. While the minor ones are the potassium, the calcium, magnesium, phosphate, and some organic acid. All these are present in smaller quantity. And all these ions, they are being regulated. There are some situations when sodium will be less in the blood, in the plasma, while there are some other situations when sodium will be high. Hyponatremia, hypernatremia, we are still going to talk about them. So the kidney is responsible for controlling the ionic concentration in the plasma. So when sodium is low, there will be activation of the renin angiotensin and aldosterone system. More aldosterone, more sodium retention, fine. But when sodium is high, so there will also be some regulations. So the kidney is responsible for fluid regulation, not only fluid. I've explained how kidney is responsible for fluid. I said to diuresis, you tend to urinate more. When there's more fluid, you urinate more. And the kidney is not only responsible for fluid level regulation, it's also responsible for ionic regulation, we say electrolyte regulation. And we said the bicarbonate is involved in pH, in monitoring of the body pH. So since the kidney is responsible for electrolyte, we can as well say that the kidney is also responsible for acid-base balance. So the acid-base balance function of the kidney and the electrolyte fluid function will be explained in subsequent videos and renal function. Okay, but for now, that is beyond the scope of this discussion. Yeah, I said intracellular fluid. I've said this earlier. Intracellular fluid has low level of sodium and chloride, while there's higher concentration of potassium. This has been said earlier. And yeah, I still need to explain this. Though I've explained earlier, but then let me still make more emphasis on it. Let's say this is the capillary. Okay, this is the capillary. Am I making sense? This is the capillary. Okay, this is the cell. And in between them is the interstitial space. All right. This capillary, they are being fenestrated. Okay, they are being fenestrated. The endothelial cells, they are being fenestrated. Okay. They are being fenestrated. Am I communicating? So this fenestration permit what it permit fenestration. These fenestrations permit water fluid to exit. Okay. However, the ions, the sodium, the calcium, the potassium, the percarbonate, okay, the potassium, the phosphate, they don't really pass through like that. And that is why there's a need for a pump known as potassium, sodium potassium ATPase. Okay, there's a need for pump. So, and this is known as active transport. So when we get to transport, cellular transport, active and passive transport, in subsequent videos, that will be will be explained in more fine details. So pump exists between cell membrane. So this is the cell membrane. This is the cell membrane. This is cell. This is the cell membrane. This endothelium is also more like cell membrane. So pump exists. So pump exists. So this pump is an active pump because it makes use of ATP. It makes use of energy. So and this pump, sodium potassium ATPase, it tightly regulates concentration of sodium and what and potassium. And that's why if there is an affectation of this pump, let's say in a situation when uh there's low blood supply or there's ischemia or low blood supply. When there's low blood supply, oxygen will not be supplied to cells. And when there's no oxygen, I said this makes use of energy, ATP, there won't be ATP. So this pump will die. And when this pump dies, so more sodium will be what? More sodium will be retained inside the cell. The sodium will not be able to come out. More sodium will be retained. And when more sodium is retained, of course, you know that sodium is an osmotically active substance. And I said that water tends to pass freely. Most of the time, water passes freely. So when water passes, so due to the accumulation of sodium at this side of the cell, at this side, which is the cellular side, its osmotically active substance pulls water inside. So and that this can lead to cellular edema. Cellular edema. Okay, cellular edema. So that's just a basic principle there. Now let's move on. Now, measurement of fluid volumes in different body compartments. This is more of practical stuff. But then if you have any questions regarding this, we are going to skip this part. But if you have any questions, our brainstorming group is opened. So you can always ask any questions you have. Okay. But the basic principle about measurement of fluid volume in different body compartments is that a marker substance will be injected into that compartment. Let's say you want to try and calculate the fluid volume in plasma. A marker substance will be injected in the plasma. After that, the marker substance will be evenly dispersed. So after that, the total mass of the substance after dispersion in the fluid remains equal to the total mass injected. Okay, so if 1 ml of a solution containing 10 mg per ml of dye is injected in a chamber and the final concentration is 0.05 mg per ml, the chamber volume can be calculated using the dilution principle. So an example of the marker substance, there are a whole lot of them: heavy water, tritium, deuterium, and antipyrine. So in the extracellular fluid volume, marker substance has been used, something like radioactive sodium chloride, iothalamide, thiosulfate, inulin. Okay, so all these are not really they are more of practical aspects which should be taught in the laboratory. Okay, now let's go to regulation of fluid exchange and osmotic equilibrium. Kindly follow us in our second part of this lecture as we discuss our basic principles of osmosis and osmotic equilibrium. I've tried to explain just a little while I was explaining cellular edema, where I was saying that if there is a failure of sodium potassium ATPase pump, more sodium will be retained inside the cell, and osmotically active substance tends to pull in water. So that will cause cellular edema. But to provide a more granular and a more fine explanation, we need to look into the basic principle of osmosis and osmotic pressure. So in the second part of this lecture series, that's where we will start from. Thank you for being part of this lecture to the end. I really appreciate. Thank you for your attention. Do well to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Thank you very much.